This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network as we talk Seattle Seahawks football. And we're going to do that with the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast and reporter for Seahawks Maven at SI, Corbin Smith. Corbin, good to have you on the program again.
Nice to join you again. It's been an awesome first 3 weeks of football,
Yes.
and up until today, we haven't had any issues with COVID-19, and hopefully this little blip is going to end up being just that, a little blip.
Yeah, that's a little. We had a little blip last week, and it turned out to be a little blip. So, like you said, let's keep our fingers crossed. But yeah, everything as far as the Seattle Seahawks is going great, and the Seahawks were my pick to make it to the Super Bowl. I mentioned that to you earlier, and I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing as an observer, obviously, with the team I picked. And offensively, I keep telling everybody, matter of fact, Russell Wilson's my fantasy quarterback, and DK Metcalf's on my team. What I keep telling everybody is, and I said this even after the first week, is that Russell Wilson right now, it is so obvious if you look at it, and maybe it's going to take people a little bit longer to figure it out, but it's so obvious to me that this is the best offense he's ever had. I mean, he has got, between his experience in the league, the offensive line is good, and he's had issues with that, as you know, in the past. He's got the running game. He's got tight ends. He's got wide receivers. I mean, he's got everything that he could possibly want. And is it any surprise then that he's breaking records the way he's breaking them?
Well, I don't know that anybody thought he was going to throw 14 touchdowns the first 3 games, but I mean, they are absolutely letting Russ cook. He's got a headline show on the Food Network right now, the way that he's dishing the football around to all of his receivers and his tight ends and running backs. Chris Carson's got 3 receiving touchdowns out of the backfield too.
Yeah.
So he's just been spreading the wealth. And I think I told you this the last time that we chatted, that I thought this was the best supporting cast that he's ever had around him. The big question mark was the offensive line, and they struggled a little bit more against the Cowboys on Sunday, but still, Russell Wilson had a lot of time in the pocket, and there were a lot of plays where, ironically, the Cowboys' banged-up secondary wasn't letting guys get open in the second half. The pass protection was holding up, and unfortunately couldn't find anybody open, so then the pressure was hitting. So really the offensive line has exceeded expectations to this point, and they've got a lot of depth there. They lost Damian Lewis in the first quarter with an ankle sprain and put Jordan Simmons at right guard and didn't miss a beat. So they've got the most depth. This is a really solid offensive line. I wouldn't say it's top 10, but it doesn't need to be. Top 15 unit in the league up front in front of Russell Wilson, his ability to manipulate the pocket and all the weapons he's got. He still hasn't gotten a throw to Phillip Dorsett yet either. You had Phillip Dorsett in there, or maybe even Josh Gordon, waiting to see if Roger Goodell's ever going to reinstate him this season. But they could add some more weapons on the outside, and that's a scary proposition for the rest of the league with the way that Russell Wilson's playing right now. I don't care if you're in man, zone coverage, whatever. He's got time, and he buys himself time sometimes to be able to get the football to his guys on the outside with his accuracy and his downfield ability. Near impossible to stop right now.
Speaking of the offensive line, Damian Lewis banged up in the last game, one of the rookies on the team. And so far, so good. If you take a look at how he's performed, and of course, Shell was brought in as a free agent, but Lewis as a rookie is really, I mean, at this point, you got to believe he's exceeding expectations considering he's a rookie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was impressed with his game film at LSU, but starting on day one as an offensive lineman, especially today's NFL, with everything that happened this offseason, no OTAs, no mini camps, and he's had some issues with penalties. He's had 3 holding penalties the first 3 games, but he has been a mauler in the run game. He's held up well in pass protection. I thought that was going to be a big injury for them the other day when he went out early in the game. It sounds like he's got a good chance to play against the Dolphins next weekend, so dodged a bullet there. But Jordan Simmons played really well in his place. They're going to get Lewis back in the lineup as soon as they can, though, because this kid has been impressive. One of the top 10 highest graded guards by Pro Football Focus as well. So they normally dock all of Seattle's linemen. They don't usually like Seahawks offensive linemen. So he has become an anomaly there. And so he's been a really exciting addition that fits what Mike Solari wants in the interior.
All right, let's stick with the offense then, because besides Lewis going down, also Chris Carson, he's the big injury from this past week. And I got a kick out of Well, first, I was really disappointed in Troy Aikman because he's been around football forever. He knows what goes on in the piles. And for him to look at the replay of Carson getting his knee twisted and not say anything, I mean, that's just, come on, dude.
It was
Yeah.
pathetic.
I mean, what are you doing?
It,
I mean,
it,
is that because
as,
you're a
as a
cowboy?
former running back, Greg, I used to be a running back myself, so I know what it's like to have guys try to do dirty things after they tackle you. That is about as bad as it gets.
Yes.
And being in the press box, watching the replay, it just made me cringe. I mean, normally in the press box, I'm not going to show much emotion. I'm doing my job. I'm covering the team, and you're not trying to be biased or whatnot. But that, I don't care if that would have happened to Ezekiel Elliott, any other running back.
Sure.
That is inexcusable. You can't do that. And I'm stunned that the officials were not able to see that and do something about it. I mean, he should have been ejected. If you're going to eject somebody for targeting, that
Yeah.
you can ruin a guy's career doing
Yes.
that. You can break their ankle. You can rip multiple ligaments in their knee, which is what I feared. Luckily, Chris Carson MRI showed he has no ligament damage, so he might be able to play this weekend. I'd be surprised if he plays on Sunday. They'll probably be cautious with him, but they really dodged a bullet there because I thought that looked really bad, and
Especially the way he acted.
it's one of those things. Oh yeah, I mean, seeing him on the ground, and it was just one of those things where that type of tackle is completely avoidable. There had to be intent there behind that. He did not have to do
No.
that. He chose to do that. And so this is a kid, Tristan Hill, the one that made the tackle, that's got a reputation going back to his time at UCF of being kind of a dirty player. And that was one of the reasons he fell in the draft. I thought he had first round talent, but he's a guy that's made some questionable decisions off the field. He's been deemed dirty on it. And he also had a play where he had a helmet to helmet hit on Russell Wilson that was called for roughing the passer. Ended up being huge because the Seahawks got a second attempt at a 2-point conversion there at the end, and they converted on it. So he paid for that one. But I absolutely think Tristan Hill should have been suspended, not just fined for that. If you're wanting to eliminate plays like that, which they absolutely have no place on the football field, you got to do something more than just fining a guy 25 grand or whatever. Have him miss a couple games. And I think that would send a message to a player like that. Hey, we're not going to condone that kind of behavior. You saw KJ Wright and Quandre Diggs tweeting about it after the game too. Like, this is inexcusable. There is no place in this game for that type of a play. He should have been kicked out. Dallas players, I'm sure if you showed the replay to them, they would have said that as well. I mean, none of these players want to see stuff like that happen on the field.
All right, so it's good that Carson is, like you said, there's a good chance that he might be able to get back and play against Miami this week, which is great news for everybody's concerned, including the league. Okay, so the weapons are obvious when you see it. Lockett, and he's been around for a few years, and Metcalf, and okay, well, I do have to ask you about the playoff for Metcalf. Was there any discussion afterwards? Did Metcalf have anything to say? The coaching staff regarding, to make sure he doesn't do that again.
Oh yeah, Pete Carroll's been asked about it a couple times since Sunday, and obviously that's not something that they are going to tolerate. That is a huge mistake, but at the same time, it's something they're going to move on from. He was able to get redemption at the end, and it just was strange that DK Metcalf, of all players, did that because he's such a humble kid, and it just doesn't strike you as the kind of thing he would do, dogging it into the end zone like that and holding the football out and letting it get punched out. Just very uncharacteristic. And so I know Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, and all those guys were really surprised to see him do that, but he is absolutely going to learn from it. You definitely will not see DK Metcalf doing that again. He's not going to make a big mistake like that. And again, redeemed himself at the end and ended up being a moot point. But man, can you imagine how different this game would have been after they got that forced fumble early in the third quarter and then quickly capitalized with a touchdown from Wilson to Jacob Hollister? It would have been 37-15 at that point. The blowout would have been on. Yep. And because that touchdown wasn't there, it allowed the Cowboys to be able to put together a couple scoring drives, and suddenly they're right back in the game. I don't know how differently things play out if Seattle has that extra touchdown on there, but it would have been extremely difficult at that point, 22 points down, for the Cowboys to be able to make that rally. Even though they did the week before against the Falcons, very tough to do that two weeks in a row in the NFL.
What was your take on the Cowboys, by the way? Because look, we know they got the weapons offensively, and they're even down linemen, and they still can put up big numbers the last couple of weeks. I guess it's the defense. The defense is just very unimpressive right now.
I think the defense is what's going to hold this team back. It's the back half,
Yep.
especially. They don't have the talent in the secondary right now. They lost Chidobe Awuzie on injured reserve, so he's out for a couple weeks. He was their number one corner. You got Trayvon Diggs, the rookie, across from him. He got toasted a few times. He did punch that ball out on DK Metcalf, which ended up being a big play in that game, but he got toasted several times. There were receivers running all over the place, especially in the first half, wide open for Seattle. So I think that's going to be the big thing for them. They're kind of like the Seahawks in that regard. To win a lot of games, they're going to have to do it shootout style, and they've got the weapons on offense to do it, especially if their line gets a little healthier. But the saving grace for them is they play in the NFC least, which right now nobody seems to have any interest in emerging as a front runner in that division. I didn't think they could get worse after last year, but I'm starting to think it's possible
Yeah.
that division didn't improve at all or it got worse from 2019 to 2020.
All right, now back to Seattle, and let's talk about the defense. We'll start with Jamal Adams, and he gets hurt in the game, and Seattle's still able to hold on. How I can just imagine, but how has Jamal Adams taken to Seattle, and how has Seattle taken to Jamal Adams?
It's been a very exciting time for both sides. The Seahawks absolutely needed that energy and that playmaking ability on defense. And he's just brought an element they have never had before, his ability to blitz. And I think going into this, after they traded for Adams, Pete Carroll was probably thinking, we're not going to blitz him that much. But you have to. The guy is such a rare playmaker, and his ability to get back there and the fact that they cannot generate a pass rush away from him. That front line has really struggled once again. So they've had to call upon Jamal Adams to be their main pass rusher. And ironically, he suffered his groin injury the other day blitzing Dak Prescott and kind of stumbled awkwardly, landed weird. And you could see him favoring that groin area after that play. He played a couple other snaps and then checked out. I'll be surprised if he plays against the Dolphins because Pete Carroll made it sound like it was going to be very difficult for him to make it back from that grade 1 strain. I would think that it's not going to be something that's going to keep him out super long, but those soft tissue injuries you do have to be careful with. You don't want to bring him back too fast or he could injure it worse. And so I think the Seahawks are going to be protective of him as they get ready to go to Miami. But on the field, he's missed a few assignments in coverage. He's had some issues getting beat downfield a couple times, which Pete Carroll admitted those are areas we have to continue to improve. But this defense, I don't know where they would have been the first couple games without him out there making plays and providing some pass rush for him off the edge. He's made some nice plays in coverage. He's been blasting people. So he has proven himself well worth the price they paid the Jets to bring him to Seattle.
Now, as far regarding the fact that they did give up the draft capital in that trade, is there any possibility that Seattle is going to be able to have any more draft capital to acquire another key defender? If not, how do they go about doing that? I'm assuming there's a possibility of picking someone up that's a current free agent, but defensively, they've got to add. They just have to if they want to compete, or if anything, they either have to get healthier or some of these young players have got to step up. This particular defense that you see right now, it's going to be awfully I'm not going to say it can't happen, but it's going to be awfully tough to win a championship this way. You're going to be looking at high scoring games and every playoffs and a Super Bowl, and it's not easy to do it that way.
Yeah, I think this defense, though, it's still very early, especially with that secondary. They haven't been able to get all four of those guys on the field together consistently because Quandre Diggs was out for 3 quarters against the Patriots after being ejected for a helmet-to-helmet hit. Quentin Dunbar missed this past weekend with a knee issue. They're hoping he's going to be back. And so they just haven't been able to get those guys together on the field to really mesh. And without a normal offseason, I figured there were going to be some growing pains. Not this bad. I didn't think they'd be giving up an NFL record for passing yards the first 3 weeks with the talent that they've got back there. But certainly that, as well as the injuries, have played a role in that. As far as trying to upgrade the defense, I don't know that they have the draft capital to go out and get anybody like, say, a Ryan Kerrigan from Washington. He would make a lot of sense, bringing in as a veteran to bolster that pass rush. But you're going to have to give up probably a second or a fourth round pick to get him. And Seattle already is without their first and third for this year because they traded it for Adams, a deal that looks like it was a smart move,
Sure.
but they're hamstrung there. Now, if Washington has a couple positions that they want to try to upgrade, you could maybe throw a late round pick and then throw a player in there. Maybe a receiver like David Moore could make some sense to them. A running back like Carlos Hyde, if Rashad Penny comes back healthy in a few weeks, maybe they could make a move there as well. I mean, there are some options potentially. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to go out and make a trade. Clay Matthews is still out there available. Maybe that's the one free agent they could take a look at. Jabal Shurd as well. Those are two guys that are left on the market that might be able to help them still, that are available. I just don't know that they're going to have much flexibility being able to make another trade to help this defense.
And did you say that there's the possibility, or they are looking or speaking to Damon Harrison?
Damon Harrison, last week, there were reports that came out, and actually I've been reporting about this since May. There's been interest from Seattle in him dating back to then, but there was some hesitation from Harrison about playing this season. He had been considering retirement.
Okay, yeah.
He had a newborn at home with the COVID stuff. I think there were a number of different factors there that prevented him from being on a roster for training camp and the start of the season. But he wants to play now, and the reports last week were indicating he was going to be in Seattle this week for a visit. I've been trying to reach out to my sources, haven't heard any updates on that, but I would be surprised if the Seahawks don't bring him in and sign him to the roster, which, interestingly enough, their defensive tackles have been playing really well, but Damon Harrison, I still think, has a lot to offer and can still play at a high level. And he played in some bad teams the last few years. I think there's enough talent on this defense. You bring him in, he might be another stabilizing force that can help this group improve moving forward. So I would be surprised if there's not a move coming there. It seems like the interest is mutual now from both sides.
I like the Ryan Kerrigan idea, though, and I understand where you're coming from there as far, but he is older, and that I think would be an advantage.
He can still rush the passer, though.
He's a good player. I'm just saying, I think it helps the bargaining when you're thinking about what kind of a draft pick you have to give up. I don't think you'd have to give up a top 3. I'm looking like, were you saying maybe a 4? I think that's very possible. What is he? He's in his early 30s, right?
Yeah, and it's been a few years since he had a double-digit sack season, but he's still a very productive player.
Is.
And I think if you put him, Washington has enough talent at defensive end now, especially after drafting Chase Young and Montez Sweat the last 2 years, that I would think if they feel like they're not in a position, and right now, here's the thing, that division's so bad that they're right in the thick of things to win that division. So they might not feel like they need to make a deal like that. But at the same time, you also have to be looking ahead, like, we're not contending for a Super Bowl right now. We've got a young quarterback, a young roster. Let's see if we can get an extra draft pick so that we can continue building this roster under our new coach, Ron Rivera. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. I just think the draft capital is the thing that potentially is going to prevent such a deal from happening. But he's the one name out there you could trade for. Maybe Carlos Dunlap is another name that I would include there to trade for, possibly that can help this team. But not a lot of options. And I think in this young season, especially with the COVID stuff, it's hard to see them pulling the trigger on their deal. Maybe right before the deadline, once you have more clarity, if Darrell Taylor is going to be available to return to you after week 6, that's going to be a nice midseason addition if he's healthy. But you don't know. You don't know any of that stuff right now. So I think it's just up in the air. If they do need to make a deal, I could see Kerrigan or Dunlap being 2 players that do interest them. I just don't know if they have the wherewithal, the means to be able to go out and make a trade like that reasonably right now.
Who did it appear that there was a specific player that received more snaps last week with Irvin out?
I think that it was supposed to be Jordan Brooks. He played 14 snaps before he got hurt. And then they kind of went with a by committee approach. They played a lot of nickel too. And Ugo Amadi's been playing really well in that slot position since they lost Marquise Blair, another injury they had in week 2, tearing his ACL. So Amadi stepped in and he's played great the last 2 weeks there. So he played over 80% of the snaps. They went with a lot of nickel sets out there against Dallas's pass-happy attack. They used Shaquem Griffin a lot at the end of the game. And I asked Pete Carroll about this yesterday. I don't know what more that kid has to do to get more opportunities to play. He comes out there in the final drive. He made 4 or 5 impact plays in that final drive where Seattle ended up turning back Dallas so they could hold on to win the game. he plays with so much energy and so much passion, and he's so athletic, flying all over the field. I just feel like there's got to be some way that they can use him. I was surprised they waived him at the beginning of the season because I thought he had a really good training camp. So maybe this is his opportunity now. Carroll was kind of hinting
That's
at that.
right.
He's going to play again against the Dolphins. So maybe this is his chance now to get a lot of snaps and really show, hey, I deserve to be out here contributing for this defense. And I just think when you get a guy that runs a sub 4.4 like Shaquem Griffin does, and you can rush him off the edge, I don't care if he only weighs 215, 220 pounds. Tackles are still not going to love having to deal with a guy with that much speed coming off the edge, and he's tough, and he just plays with so much heart. I just feel like the way this defense is playing, especially, he might be the guy right now that the Seahawks turn to a bit more and see, hey, can he give us a spark at that linebacker spot?
All right, now the game this week in Miami. So it is, you have pretty much I don't even think it's pretty much, it is. You've got the furthest southern east team going to play the furthest west northwest team. So that's what happens when these two teams get together. It's a long trip, but historically, and we just saw it again week 1, when Seattle makes these trips to the East Coast time zones and they play these Eastern Coast teams, they actually have a lot of success.
They do. They do. I don't know what it is, but you look back in earlier years in Seahawks history, and they absolutely struggled in these games, like most West Coast teams do. But he's got a formula, Pete Carroll does, that has really worked getting his players prepared. They won all their East Coast time zone games last year. They won their first one in Atlanta this year. Now, this is a different animal flying down to Miami. The last time that they were down there was 2012, Russell Wilson's rookie season. So Russell Wilson's a lot better than back then. But they went there, and Ryan Tannehill, who was a rookie for the Dolphins at that point, beat the Seahawks that game. And so they've had their struggles there at times when they played in Miami. That being said, on paper, the Seahawks should be the favorite in this game. And this is maybe a game you can cure what's ailing you on defense a little bit, because Miami doesn't have near the offensive firepower that the last 3 teams the Seahawks have played have.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, you usually know early.
You don't.
And that's when you've kind of, all right, you know what? We're in trouble. Ryan Fitzpatrick's hitting them, like in the Jacksonville game, or the opposite, where, they go 3 and out. He throws a pick, and then you're like, okay, this is our game. So that's the thing. Parker's healthy. He's a good weapon. Preston Williams, you don't know what you're going to get there with him every week as well. He's very inconsistent, but he's a talent. Jasicki's having a tremendous season. The tight end, the Penn State tight end, and he was sought after when he came out a couple of years ago. They don't run the ball very effectively, but they got the kid from Washington, I believe, has actually been their top runner.
Yeah, Myles Gaskins kind of emerged as their go-to running back. They definitely don't have the stable of ball carriers that the last couple teams Seattle played have had. But I think Miami's probably going to have to try a little bit harder to get that ground game going, because they don't necessarily have the consistent passing attack and the weapons on the outside to be able to do what the Cowboys and the Patriots and the Falcons have done the last few weeks, where all of those teams have capable receivers that can dominate games. I don't know that Miami has a guy that can necessarily do that. That being said, if Jamal Adams isn't out there, which it looks like he's probably not going to be, who knows if Quentin Dunbar is going to be able to play this week. If the Seahawks are down a couple of guys in the secondary, it might not matter. Yeah. Miami's receivers might look like superheroes.
That's right.
So the way the Seahawks pass defense has played and their pass rush has been so inconsistent, I guess every week you just don't know what to expect. Is this going to finally be the week that maybe things start clicking a little bit? On paper, it should be a game they're favored, but you're never going to take anybody lightly. And Miami is a well-coached football team, and that keeps them in games.
Yeah, this is definitely because of the travel. Even though Seattle has that record, still the travel, you haven't lost yet. You've been home for a few weeks. You've had these big games. There's exciting games. You're taking on a team they've been in the playoffs in a while. So yeah, we could say the word trap. It's definitely possible that word.
It qualifies.
Yes. So that this is one of those games that is not going to be. Most games in the NFL aren't the gimme games that you see. in college. So, but and right now the Miami Dolphins are not playing like one of those really bad teams that you just know, yeah, we'll be able to beat this team. So they're a dangerous team. Before I let you go, Corbin, what's is there another measuring stick game on the horizon over the next few weeks Seahawk fans could be looking forward to?
Well, before the season, I would have been saying week 5 against the Minnesota Vikings, but the way
Yeah.
that they've started this season, I never would have thought Minnesota would open the year 0-3. I thought this was going to be a team that was right in the thick of things in that NFC North. And now with the fact that Chicago and Green Bay both have started 3-0, they are in a huge hole. And I'm not saying the Vikings can't crawl out of it and get back into the hunt, but it's going to be very difficult for them to do that when you consider how many good teams there are in the NFC in general. And that division is pretty top loaded. I think Chicago's got a chance to fall back some as the year progresses. I don't expect them
Oh
to
yeah.
continue to win games. Somehow they're finding ways to do so. Kudos to them. But nonetheless, I think really week 7 after their bye week when they play at Arizona, Cardinals coming off a tough loss to the Lions. It's kind of an unexpected one there, but that is a much improved football team. And it's the first divisional game that Seattle has. They don't
Wow.
play a divisional game until week 7. So that is really your barometer right there because they're going to be playing an onslaught there. They've got the Cardinals, then the 49ers, and then the Buffalo Bills 3 straight weeks. Oh, and the Rams are coming up after that too. So they're going to be playing a lot of really good teams, particularly in their division during a 4 or 5 week stretch there. And that's really going to be the starting point in Glendale, where they've had a lot of success winning games, but it's been a house of horrors for them. They've had a lot of injuries there over the years. So they're hoping they could have more good luck because last season they got out of there without any major injuries. Hopefully they could do that again and get a W, but that'll be their next major barometer as far as whether they're going to have a chance to win this division or not. You got to beat the teams in your division, and Arizona is certainly a team that is going to be in the hunt for that division title this
Is
year.
there any math? I haven't really done the gone through history, but you've got the extra team in the playoffs now in each conference. Do you think there's even a chance that 4 teams in one division could get into the postseason?
You know, if it's ever going to happen, that NFC West division maybe is the one that could do it. I think that they're going to beat up on each other enough that it's going to be very difficult for that to happen. There's going to be a really good football team that's going to finish 8-8 or 9-7 probably, but I could definitely see 3 teams getting double-digit victories because that is the deepest, most talented division out there. Arizona won just 5 games last season, and they've got Kyler Murray now in his second year looking like he's going to be an absolute star in this league. And they added DeAndre Hopkins. The Rams look revitalized, nearly had that incredible comeback against the Bills this weekend. The 49ers have been ravaged by injuries, but they're still winning games because they're well coached and they have really good depth. So this is just it's just an exciting
Yep.
division. It's a brutal division, but with that extra playoff spot, I could definitely see 3. I wouldn't be stunned if all 4 of them found a way to get into the playoffs. And if they do, I mean, it would be, like you said, extremely
Yeah.
historic, and it would be fitting given the amount of talent and the coaching that's in this
Well,
division.
there's only going to be one team from the NFC East, so that's for sure. So that makes it
Yeah, that helps. They're the polar
yeah.
opposite. I mean, you might have you might have your next 7-9
Yeah.
division champion coming out of there
Not good.
with the way things have started. And I thought Philadelphia was going to be decent, and they look horrible right now. Dallas has the talent on offense, but as I said earlier, I just don't know if I can trust that defense enough. But in that division, they might be able to get to 8 or 9,
Yeah.
10 wins maybe because they're going to be playing against a lot of cupcakes. Washington looks like they've made progress, but they're still not
Nope.
good. And the New York
Oh.
Giants, they are the perennial dumpster fire of the NFC. So Dave Gettleman has just done a really poor job of constructing that roster. When you lose your running back and suddenly you can't do anything, that spells doom as far as your roster construction goes. So that division, like you said, one team coming out of that one most likely, and then the NFC South, I thought Atlanta might be a team that was decent this year, and all they've done is just have leads the last 2 weeks and just choke them away. So now they're 0-3. Carolina is probably not going to be going anywhere. And New Orleans and Tampa Bay probably your 2 playoff teams.
Well, that's
there.
the thing.
And then, of course,
If
the
you're
North.
going to get just one team out of the South, you would think that maybe it's if New Orleans something continues to go wrong there, they haven't gotten off to a good start. Maybe
Maybe it's Tampa.
Yeah. That's the thing. So it could happen. You never know. And if the rest of the NFC, if Seattle is not just if you're saying most of the NFC West is going to play each other all later in the season, and if that happens, then it is possible that these four teams can, for the first half of the season, just keep beating teams outside their division. And then even if they beat each other up for the last half of the season, they would still have enough wins.
You're still gonna have a bunch of teams with 3, 4, 5 losses is it. Yeah.
So you never know.
That's why a loss like the one to Detroit for Arizona is one that's probably going to come back to bite them, because this is a division where losing games like that where you were favored, you can't afford to have many slip ups because the rest of the division is just simply too good.
And that's why Seattle.
So,
that's why this week is one of those games as well. You know, if you're trying to win the division, and
absolutely, you can't lose in Miami. That's the kind of loss that you still might make the playoffs, but it's going to be really hard to win this division when you lose a game like that.
Corbin, great job as always. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you hopefully sometime in October. And all the best to Seattle, the Seahawks. And let's just also hope the NFL just keeps chugging along.
Thanks for having me, Greg.